Bioactive Nexus podcast. I'm Dr. Bill, and with me,
Professor Gene.
Professor Gene. Yes. Okay. Yeah, we had a long hiatus there because twice now we had to reschedule this. Sorry for that, guys. Due to travel schedules for both Gene and I, we had family vacations or business or whatever. So anyway, but we're going to do episode 6 today is on women's health, and then a week from today we're going to do it again on men's health. So that's our June. We're sticking with the June schedule in terms of what we planned in terms of men and women's health, in terms of supplements, ingredients, the science, that sort of thing. So, So we are streaming live here to LinkedIn. Our Facebook page is still too new. It won't stream. It just gave me an error message, Gene, so it's not going to do that. We don't have any followers. But it's okay. We'll post it there later, of course, and everywhere. And again, you can follow our LinkedIn page, our website, of course, our YouTube channel, and then after the show, this podcast will be up on Spotify and, of course, RSS distribution everywhere. So Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, etc. Don't forget to send in your questions, ideas for us by email, and things that you guys would like to hear about.
You could send it by LinkedIn too, if you like. Either way.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, that's probably easier. You can message us on LinkedIn. I think there's an actual link on this live stream that you can click on to put your questions into the show here. So we'll see if that works. And then what else? I think we have a few announcements here. So, Gene, you want to probably make an announcement about the Vitamin Professor podcast you're doing.
So I have 2 podcast series I do. I have my one with my buddy here, Bill, Bioactive Nexus, which obviously you know about because here you are listening. And I have a second one I do called The Vitamin Professor, and that is through Vitamin Retailer magazine. And the format there is I interview people predominantly from raw material companies that have good science on their raw materials, on their nutraceuticals, and ask them some questions. We talk about that, and we just learn a little bit about the specific nutraceuticals. And so that also happens twice a month, and you can access that through LinkedIn, or you can go to the Vitamin Retailer magazine website, click on the multimedia link, and see all the podcasts for that. So I invite you to join me for that, as well as to stay tuned in for our Bioactive Nexus podcast series.
Very good. Cool. So we're really putting it out there in the industry here. So I have a couple of announcements myself. I think last month I announced I was on the job search here, looking for executive position within the industry. That's still happening. There's some promising things happening on that front, but we'll see what happens with that. There's a lot of cool stuff I'm working on, but I don't have the reveal for all that yet. So stay tuned. Also, I did launch my personal brand, which is my, you can go to my website I launched it. It's at williamdavidclark.com. And that's my kind of personal brand in terms of where spirit meets science. And that podcast, actually, Gene, will start in July. I'm excited about that. Yeah, so we're going to kick that off in July. That'll be on kind of easy. It's going to be on Sunday mornings, chill, where you can just kind of sit back with your coffee and tune in, and we'll just talk about some cool stuff.
And that's a great podcast to listen to if you're a person who thinks that spirituality and science are just incompatible. You will listen to this and learn that they, in fact, are not incompatible.
No, very much connected. And, I was the scientist first as I kind of set out on my spiritual path. So it'll actually be a 24-year anniversary next month when I kick off this podcast of when I started down that. And I'm not going to give it away here, but I'll share the story that kind of led me on where I am today with that. And I have some books I'm getting ready to publish. I write poetry and other inspirational things.
And he's a good poet. I've read some of his poetry.
Yeah, thank you, Gene. So yes, we're gonna, and that will stream it live on LinkedIn as well. I already have quite a few followers there that signed up, so we'll start kicking that off here, like I said, next month. But again, you can go to the website at williamdavidclark.com. You can see what's coming in terms of podcasts. There's a blog there. guided meditations, and the books, upcoming books that are coming. Anyway, cool. All right. So without further ado, let us jump into our topic of women's health. Okay. This is a big one, right? Same with men's health.
It is a big one.
Yeah. They're both big. And I thought what would be cool, Gene, is if we started out with a little trivia on science with women that related to women's health, which is kind of interesting. Something I came across by accident, actually, and I looked at it and I said, "Oh, this is pretty cool. We can share that." Did you know that in the time of the Egyptians, some thousands of years ago, that there was an Egyptian pregnancy test? Can you guess what it was? They actually had a pregnancy test for that.
I would not have been able to guess it before you told me, and I would never have guessed this. But yes,
yes, there was. So believe it or not, the ancient Egyptians would take barley and wheat, which were crops that they grew, and the women would pee on them. That's what I mean, urinate, pee on them. And what they would look at is if there was faster sprouting of the barley and wheat. Okay. And true enough, it actually was fairly accurate. And you'll wonder, well, how does that work? Okay, so there was a 1963 clinical study done that found that it was about 70% accurate, actually. And what they believe the reason for that was increased estrogen accelerated the seed growth. So I thought that was kind of fascinating.
That is interesting.
It's pretty interesting. Now, they went as far as to say that if barley grew faster than wheat, that it was a boy or girl, but that never panned out. That didn't work that way. But the interesting trivia. But of course, I'd say that's probably the early days of, analytical analysis of bodily fluids, taking blood, urine and all that sort of thing, so it's going way back there. So pretty fascinating. So that's my my little trivia.
Trivia for the day.
Trivia for the day that I've never heard before, and you probably haven't either. So, so before we get into, I think we have to frame this that, it's important to have a healthy lifestyle. Okay, it doesn't matter what supplements you're taking or anything like that. So regular exercise, diet, and a spiritual practice, that these are all the trifecta for me in terms of that. And of course, supplements are part of that healthy diet. You can take to provide benefits and stuff. But we should probably highlight what are the top women's health issues, I think. And then we can get into specifics around vitamins, minerals, botanicals, and other types of ingredients.
Sure.
Let's start with that. So, number one, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, this isn't surprising, and it's certainly not unique to women, but you have heart disease. Heart disease is a major issue for men and for women, and we know that heart disease, particularly heart attacks, tend to manifest themselves somewhat differently in women than men. But at the end of the day, heart disease is a major, if not the major, health issue for women. And the second one, is cancer. Now, of course, in women, you have a lot more incidence of breast cancer and ovarian cancer. Well, you have no ovarian cancer in men. You have a very low degree of breast cancer in men, but you still have it. But that's also a big, major issue. Diabetes, again, men and women both. In fact, back in, I think it was 2010, I'm trying to remember the year, I actually wrote a book on complementary treatments for diabetes, having had it in my family, and a couple of uncles passed from it. So it was something that near and dear to my heart. And actually have one of my cousins, she has diabetes, but she's managing a lot better than her father did. Now, other health issues, not a health condition, but a health issue is pregnancy. It's a health issue because you got to take care of yourself properly during pregnancy. You got to be aware, and there are some effects that might occur, things like morning sickness, other kinds of issues that can occur that need to be addressed. As part of the menstrual cycle, a lot of women are experiencing PMS, premenstrual syndrome, or premenstrual symptoms, including mood and irritability and some of the other issues. And then also not a medical condition, but something to be aware of because of the symptomology, are both perimenopause and menopause itself. Perimenopause, that sort of precondition transitioning into menopause, and then menopause itself with the well-known features of what we call vasomotor symptoms, hot flashes, night sweats. Those are sort of the predominant ones. And there's other ones too. There's sexual issues, reduction in vaginal lubrication, a number of other areas that are affected through menopause. Not surprisingly, and can correspond with that, is you can have that increased vaginal dryness, and you might get an increase in vaginal odor because of that. And then the sort of the last major thing we're hitting on is sexual satisfaction in women, which again can be related to menopause, but not necessarily. And I'm sure you've seen, if you've gone on, Facebook or that one of these memes that show. You got this is sexual function in men, sexual function in women, and the one for men, it's like an on-off switch. Click, click. The one for women, it's like a big, huge, like airplane kind of dashboard with all these switches and all of these things. So it's not a simple explanation, but that's another thing there. So to your point, exercise, diet, and all that.
Yeah, exercise, diet is certainly important. I mean, the disease conditions are real. Okay, those, heart disease, cancer, diabetes. Diabetes is something that can be addressed unless it's type 1 and you're genetically born with that. Then, there are treatments for that. But the rest of these things are symptomatic in terms of life stage, right? And this is true for men too, and we'll get into that next week here. So, I mean, I've dealt with all these health issues, not as a woman, but as a man in a relationship with women, either my daughter or wife.
Me too.
So we know we experience that ourselves as well as men. But I think let's jump into some key ingredients, and we'll highlight some. We can't go in great detail on every ingredient in terms of the science behind it, but
it'd take too long.
It'd take too long, but we'll pull out some key things there. So without further ado, let's go to our first one, which is vitamins and minerals. Okay. Well, first of all, everybody should be taking a good multivitamin every day.
Yeah,
I think that's really, really important. But there are a few ingredients that probably women need more than men, or it could be about the same. Depends on the amounts. And that information is out there. Vitamin D and calcium. That's really important.
Absolutely.
Crucial for bone health, especially for postmenopausal women. And if you don't get enough sunlight, in terms of, that helps with vitamin D production through the skin, as we know. And again, these are all things that we already know about. There is a link to strong bones and reducing the risk of osteoporosis. So this is important. I do remember years ago, it was bone strength, take care of bone strength, take care of calcium. It was a first calcium that actually had clinical studies that actually showed it increased bone density as a supplement. That was Algical. Was it Algical? I can't remember. That was years ago. But it originally came out of Japan, but it came from a marine source, and that actually showed some clinical data on that. Iron.
Yeah, iron. So particularly when you're talking about women of reproductive age, every time a woman has a menstrual cycle and she loses some blood, she loses some iron, and you need to replace that iron. And if you don't have sufficient iron, you're not making sufficient hemoglobin, your red blood cells aren't what they need to be, your energy levels are going to drop, it's going to affect you in a number of ways, cognitively, physically, and you need to make sure to have an adequate amount. And then, of course, if you're pregnant, your body's producing a lot of blood, and you need to make sure to support that. So iron is one of the most common deficiencies that can occur in women. And so it's very important to get an adequate amount of iron, whether you are pregnant, whether you are just a woman of menstruating age. You still need it after menopause, but it's not to the same extent because you're not losing it constantly. But you still need it for all the same reasons.
Mm-hmm. And that reminds me of actually a particular ingredient that's on the market, mainly in Europe, but it's also now available in the U.S. and that's sucrosomial iron. And
Uh-huh.
Alesco is the company out of Italy. So I'm just sharing this because I happen to know that. But they've got a lot of research on their iron supplementation and iron products with their technology that they use to deliver that with the minerals. And they do for other minerals as well. And I don't think that's available in the U.S. at this stage. In fact, I'm pretty sure.
But there's still some pretty good iron materials out there. And at the end of the day, just make sure you get some iron. Make sure you have enough iron if you're a woman of menstruating age. So,
folic acid is a huge one. Obviously, we hear about that. Obviously, prenatal vitamins have a higher dosage of folic acid. This helps with development of the child, of course, during pregnancy, and so it's really important.
I would just add to that what your body needs is it needs folate, and folic acid can get converted into folate. However, there's 25, 35%, whatever, of people in general that don't have the genetic capacity to convert their folic acid into folate. And so you can sidestep that whole issue by simply using a methylfolate supplement. And I recommend that over the use of folic acid, because if you can't convert it, then you have excessive amounts of folic acid floating around, which you don't necessarily want. And it's not going to do you any good because you can't utilize it. So I would just say, get your folate, but use a methylfolate supplement. It'll do better for you.
Yeah, and there's a few good sources for that out there if you're a product formulator or looking to do that. Pretty well known there.
The Nutrilite USA, the company I work for full time as chief scientific officer, has a nice one. That's actually a couple of nice ones. Mm-hmm. So omega-3, our buddies, omega-3 fatty acids.
Well, it's not really our vitamins and minerals. So I moved that to later other ingredients, but we can talk about that since you brought it up. Definitely important for cardiovascular health.
No question about it. And DHA is particularly important in pregnancy. You need it for fetal brain development. It helps with mood, and not to mention the fact that your omega-3 fatty acids also have anti-inflammatory effects, which could be beneficial in a number of different areas, whether it's thinking about cancer, whether you're thinking about heart disease, or just about anything. So, that's a big deal.
A lot of health benefit. Yeah, I was just going to say a lot of health benefits there overall for omega-3s. That should be part of your diet for sure. Anyway. Yeah. So I love salmon.
And whether you are vegan and you say, I can't have fish oil, that's fine. They have algae sources. There's different ways to get your omega-3s. I would just add that you want to make sure you're getting a really good quality one, because if it's oxidizing and you're smelling that real fishy smell, that means it's oxidizing, and that's not so good for you. Those are exactly. That's oxidation. You don't want to be swallowing oxidation pills. So, okay.
No.
B vitamins.
B vitamins, yeah. So there's the whole complement there. Again, so many. We could go through a long time talking about each of the B vitamins, what their support in the body. It's a huge benefit there, but mainly they're involved with energy levels, brain function, production of hormones, so metabolic support there. B6 with mood regulation, which is connected to sleep even as well. So, you'll see some sleep products on the market that have maybe melatonin and vitamin B6, for example.
Good on for PMS. There's some good research on that for PMS in particular. You mentioned mood, and particularly nice for that. Yeah. And let's not forget that, B6, B12, and folate collectively are good at helping to reduce, high homocysteine levels, which is not just implicated in cardiovascular disease, but also implicated in mood disorders, depression, and so forth. So, and some other areas. So, getting those B vitamins are good for a number of things.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good segue into magnesium, which is also another one that has many benefits there as well. But for sure, mood, because it does target the GABA-A receptor,
it does.
As well. So it's going to be important for mood, for sleep, that sort of thing, but also help managing PMS symptoms, which has to do with the mood piece of this, but also cramps, because it's an important mineral for the muscle function in our bodies. And it has many roles, but it also has a role in balancing out cortisol and insulin. And especially with women who have conditions like polycystic ovarian syndrome. Okay, this is a very important mineral for women who have that particular condition.
Indeed.
And then zinc.
Zinc, yeah. You need zinc for all kinds of things. It's one of the most important minerals in terms of all the enzyme systems in the body and all the things it does, healing, etc., immune function.
Right.
But you need it for your thyroid and hormonal balance in general.
Yeah.
Zinc helps to convert thyroid hormones into their active forms, and it can help to provide some balance to other hormones like estrogen and progesterone. So it is necessary in that sense. Yep. But now, I think it's time to switch to
botanicals.
Are you ready?
Yeah, you were waiting for that.
I was.
Botanicals are fascinating because there's a lot of more complex chemistry here going on. The biochemistry and how it interacts with the body, either directly or indirectly, is kind of fascinating. So, and by the way, everything we're talking about today is probably not comprehensive in total of everything that's available out there. We're just highlighting kind of the most important things, I'd say. Obviously, there's many other vitamins and minerals that are important for health. So again, take your multivitamin every day because it's good. Eat it and have a healthy diet. So let's start with the first botanical, which I thought was interesting. Recently, I've seen some recent research on this. Is Shatavari. So which the genus species name is Asparagus racemosus, and it's in an herb that's traditionally used in Ayurvedic medicine, Indian medicine, and it has many benefits across several life stages for women, postmenopausal support. Also enhances lactation and general reproductive health. I do have a couple of comments I wanted to make about that in more general in terms of Shatavari, the most recent research on that. So there was a study done in 2021 recently that found that supplementation improved hand grip strength and increased markers of myosin contractile function in postmenopausal women. So again, as we age, right, Gene, everything starts to break down in terms of how we can function. But muscle strength is actually important. So this,
I resemble that remark.
I resemble that remark. But you need to have strength training. Look, we're in the baby boomer age group. So yeah, we need that strength resistance training. Everybody does. We do, and women need that too. So to keep muscles and bones strong. In fact, some sort of impact exercise is really important, by the way. We won't get into the whole sports nutrition thing, but that does strengthen bones, having that impact exercise. So I can't run anymore, Gene, but I still hit the bike and the elliptical, but definitely lift weights.
I walk. I take brisk walking. I used to run, but my knees wouldn't be happy with me if I did that now. So
there was another study too. It was we won't go through this in every botanical, but we're just going to highlight some interesting ones. So another one was Shatavari, which was a double-blind randomized controlled trial that demonstrated that it was with a particular formulation that actually significantly increased breast milk output and reduced time to first notable breast fullness in postpartum women. So definitely something to look at it if you're pregnant and you're going to breastfeed or that sort of scenario. No adverse events were noted with that. There's also a study related to menstrual health, clinical study with that. It was actually a combination of Shatavari and another botanical. And then there's also a 2022 review article. By the way, if you want references to any of these things that we're talking about, just hit us up and message us. We'll send you the link there and you can check it out. But there was a really comprehensive review article on Shatavari and traditional Indian medicine for various reproductive health issues, which was pretty fascinating. So again, you always more research is good. But this is just some of the recent studies here in the last few years on Shatavari. Which leads us to our next botanical. You want to take that one?
Chaste Berry, Vitex agnus castus.
Yep.
So Chaste Berry, as it turns out, I have actually formulated quite a bit with this product, this particular herbal, and I would say that it is the herb of choice for virtually any kind of a menstrual issue. So there's research on it for heavy menstruation, for painful menstruation. There's research on it for acne due to your menstrual cycle. There's research on it, and more than one study on that. There's research on it for a number of different types of PMS symptoms. Definitely, and of course, you need to get the right herbal extract, but good research. The thing about it, which is rather interesting, is we have something called relative estrogen excess, relative progesterone deficiency, meaning that we often get xenoestrogens, things that are not actual animal-based. But for example, let's say you're microwaving you got a Tupperware or some kind of container like that, and maybe you have some leftover spaghetti, and it's got some sauce in there, and you're nuking it in the microwave. Okay, and that pulls some of the xenoestrogens right out of that, and now you're starting to eat some of that. And you get that in many kinds of prepared foods. You'll find some level of xenoestrogens. So besides the estrogen that you might be exposed to in other ways, you can get these xenoestrogens or artificially created ones, which can bind to your estrogen receptors and have effects on your body so that your body will act as though it has a lot more estrogen present than it does, creating an imbalance in your system and some of the symptoms that can go along with that. So one of the things about Chaste Berry is it because it helps promote healthy progesterone levels, you get a better balance again between your progesterone and your estrogen. So its mechanism of action is particularly interesting. The research on it is extremely solid. If you use a good extract, you only need around 40 milligrams to be effective.
40 milligrams. That's right.
And so it's definitely the herb of choice for just about any kind of menstrual disorder. So yeah, that's my little dissertation on Chaste Berry. So
cool. And then next one, Rhodiola Rosea, or
another favorite of mine.
Rose root, Arctic root. Love this. I take it every day. I've been taking it for years. But and I'm going to save the details on this one for men because I have some trivia to talk about with men that's related to this. So the little teaser for you. So we'll wait for that. But bottom line is it's an adaptogenic, right? Has those types of properties, helps regulate cortisol levels, and supports overall adrenal function. So, of course, this is going to help during periods of stress or hormonal shifts.
Really, really good during stress.
Really good, yeah. And that leads us into another one, Ashwagandha, which is complementary, really, to rhodiola. I take both because the science, the way the mechanism of action, the way they both work, is complementary. But again, it's also an adaptogenic. It helps balance hormones. And there's a lot of research out there in ashwagandha. In fact, that's the number one botanical in Ayurvedic medicine, I would say, the leading one that's out there. And anyway, anything you want to add to that?
And I just wanted to add to it. What's interesting is a lot of times in the world of sexual health, for you get so much out there about men's, like men need all this help for sexual health, but some do, but you don't see as much for women. But one of the nice things about one of the major ashwagandha materials out there, KSM 66, happened to have done a nice study on women ranging between 18 years and 50 years old, showing some really significant improvements in parameters of sexual health, satisfaction, and so forth. And so I think, and that was around 600 milligrams a day. So it's rather nice that it has issues that it can help with stress. It has all the things that, your standard adaptogens can do, but in women specifically, it was found to be beneficial for sexual health. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yep. And we're going to talk about these again with men because these carries for both in this sense, in terms of the adaptogenic benefits there. Okay, Black Cohosh.
So I want to jump in on Black Cohosh.
So go ahead.
One of the things about it is, again, it's something I've formulated with a lot. It is best known for its effect on menopausal symptoms, including, hot flashes and mood swings. So the thing about a lot of herbs that are used in for menopause is some of them are directly estrogenic, meaning they contain a phytoestrogen that weakly binds with estrogen receptors, and some don't as much. So, for example, Black Cohosh doesn't directly bind to primary estrogen receptors. There's some data suggesting that the hypothalamus maybe it binds to something, but it seems to be more involved in modulating hormone activity. And what's most significant is there's been so many studies on it. There's been open label trials. There's been double-blind placebo-controlled trials. There's been trials where they've compared it to drugs. So many studies on it showing some very, very positive results in menopausal symptoms. And some of these symptoms, speaking of sexuality in women, when you start looking at rating scores that they do, and there's a sexuality domain in the rating scores in postmenopausal women, where they found some really significant effectiveness, helping with vaginal dryness, helping with other parameters of sexual health. And so you can actually use both ashwagandha and Black Cohosh to have that positive effect on sexual health in women. And of course, for the menopause, hot flashes, night sweats, nervousness, moodiness, sleeplessness, which also seems logical that reducing those symptoms would probably have a positive role to play in sexual activity. But, it's sort of the I was going to say granddaddy, but I'll say grandmother of all herbs for menopause is Black Cohosh.
Black Cohosh, yeah. And that's probably the most popular, I'd say. Another one, red clover. I've seen that in some products out there. Red clover, Trifolium pratense. So it contains isoflavones. And by the way, the chemistry, there's a lot of overlap in the plant kingdom, as we know. The chemistry in terms of natural products chemistry, you have same classes of compounds in different botanicals and herbs. Different chemical structures, slightly different, but could be in the same class. So isoflavones, for example, are estrogen-like compounds. Okay. Again, those are same thing as Gene already talked about, used for hot flashes, other menopausal symptoms. But there's not a lot of research on this one out there as much as Black Cohosh, I'd say, or Chaste Berry, but something that could require more research would be good.
Yeah, I mean, it has some studies, but unlike Black Cohosh, it is directly phytoestrogenic, so it will bind to those estrogen receptors. And there has been some studies on it, but yeah. So
actually, we don't have one on our list here, but another one comes to mind as we're talking about this is wild yam with the phytoestrogen plant-based.
Right, with the phytoestrogen, which is sometimes falsely stated to impact progesterone. It really doesn't. To your point, it's really an estrogen-related thing. But yes, it's quite effective for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one is evening primrose oil, and I remember this from back in the day before, but before Chaste Berry became popular. It was kind of the supplement of choice, that and B6, and then magnesium for PMS, and it was known for PMS and for breast pain, and it's the GLA, the gamma linolenic acid in it, primarily that's been found to have a positive effect. It's a precursor to some prostaglandins in the body, it's a hormone-like substance, has a variety of roles to play. And there has been a number of studies showing effectiveness in women with PMS. So a very good choice there. And if you're experiencing breast tenderness as one of those symptoms, it can be helpful. But even in pregnancy and lactation, like preeclampsia, a toxic condition of pregnancy, it's been shown to have benefit. So it has some value to play there. There's been some research on it even in lactation, helping to enrich the nutritional value of breast milk. So it's interesting, and of course it has anti-inflammatory properties. It has properties in other areas too, some skin conditions, things like eczema, even acne, things like stress, migraines. There's a whole lot of body of research on it, but it's a very cool material, and one of the few omega-6s that I really like.
Cool. And then we'll get into some other kind of, I wouldn't say obscure, but maybe not thought of as much as related to women's health. But again, a lot of these also carry over to men's health as well. So milk thistle is one of those. For traditionally, you think of it as for liver detox, liver protective effects there. That's Salivum marianum. And anyway, it's involved in the metabolism of hormones, and so that can help with hormonal balance. Hormonal balance, I think, is like an art more than it fluctuates so much between men and women in terms of our health that, I don't think you can always keep it perfectly in balance. You know what I mean? There's no perfect balance there. Yeah.
But you mentioned here about liver and metabolizing hormones, and one of the things about milk thistle is milk thistle stimulates the production of glutathione, a very important antioxidant compound in the liver. And in detoxification of the liver, there's something called phase 2, which is sort of the second step in detox. And there's 6 different pathways. One of those pathways is the glutathione pathway. So if you're producing more glutathione, you become more effective at metabolizing and those substances that go down that pathway. And guess what? Some of the steroid hormones, like estrogen, go down that pathway, and your body has to sort of metabolize those, break them down, and do the things it needs to do with them in order to keep the balance right. And it's something that milk thistle does help to do, to your point. So yeah, that's a great option.
Mm-hmm. And I think also another one that doesn't have a lot of research is raspberry leaf. I wanted to address that a little bit here. You see it in teas, but it's promoted for menstrual health and also for preparation for labor during pregnancy. Now, I don't know if there's
I'm going to make a comment on that one, which is very interesting. Yeah. So I used to work with a lady who was she was having difficulty in not so much getting pregnant, but keeping the pregnancy, and so she kept having problems in that regard. So she talked to me and says, "Is there anything you can use?" I said, "Well, look, I can tell you about a traditional use for raspberry leaf. I can't tell you for certain if it'll have the benefit, but here's how it's used traditionally." I explained her how to use it, where to get it, and she started drinking it. And she had, I don't know, 4 or 5 unsuccessful pregnancies. And she started drinking it, and this time she had a successful pregnancy, actually had twins. And I can't tell you if the raspberry did have the effect, but it was rather interesting that this time she did that. So, that traditional use, sometimes we don't have the science to support it, but we have a traditional use. You got to look at that and say, well, maybe there's something to it, or maybe there isn't.
Well, I mean, traditional use, if you look at the Egyptian pregnancy test, I mean, it was fairly accurate. So,
so maybe, could be that it helped. Right. So anyway.
Well, and there's so many botanicals out there that not everybody's doing research on all of these, you know what I mean? But I think certainly there's getting a lot of press in our industry news about women's health and supplements and all the things we're talking about here today. So maybe some people will do some more research around that. The other one I've seen raspberry used for is for weight loss. Now, I've seen
the raspberry ketones.
Raspberry ketone thing. I don't know about that. We won't get into that.
They never managed to get around to doing the human research that I know of on that. Yeah, they did do some research in mice, I think, but
there's
it was on Dr. Oz once, and everybody went crazy and started buying it.
Everybody went crazy on it. Yeah.
Now, whether it worked or not is another question. I'm guessing it didn't because it was a flash in the pan.
Yeah, a flash in the pan, I think. There's a lot of that stuff, especially in the weight loss area. you see that sort of thing. Okay, then we're going to get into some, one other adaptogenic, I'm jumping ahead, is ginseng, which is actually a really good one. Again, that's another one that's been shown to enhance libido, that sort of thing, not just women, but also men. But also it's an adaptogenic herb. And then there's a few other things here that probably people wouldn't think of for women in terms of sexual health or sexual function. So like maca root, okay?
Well, that's another adaptogen,
Another adaptogen, right.
Yeah, and that does have some interesting, there's actually some interesting published research on maca for that purpose. It has traditional use, but it does have some, there's a randomized double-blind study looking at the effects of it on sexual dysfunction caused by SSRI or antidepressant drugs. And they found that in use of this, they were able to help improve libido really, really significantly, statistical significant improvements. And other placebo-controlled studies have shown similar benefits with regard to sexual interest in women who are postmenopausal. So you have both postmenopausal, you have women using SSRIs, showing to be some pretty good effects. Now, you can use maca traditionally, which could be anywhere from 1.5 to 3 grams of maca powder, maca root powder, but you can also use a maca root that is standardized for its macamides and macaines. And so it's not a high standardization, it's about 0.6%. But when you do that, if you look at the amount of those compounds that you get in whole maca root, you could actually reduce your actual maca root extract down to about 270 milligrams instead of having to take 3 grams. So just one of the options to consider.
Yeah, that's one that I take every now and then if I'm going to do a protein smoothie after workout or something like that. I'll put some maca root powder in there. So another one is what you probably think of traditionally for men, but also for women as well, is Tribulus terrestris. There's, again, not a ton of research on this. Actually, I wish somebody would actually do the research on these particular botanicals for sexual function and sexual health. I mean, my previous company, a CRO, I actually did a clinical study on some it was on a particular product in this area. But I think there's, I don't know, maybe there's a stigma attached to that people just think of, well, in the pharmaceutical area for men, just take Viagra, Cialis, right? But that doesn't address the challenges with women either. So
it doesn't.
No. So I think this is one that needs some more research. And actually, I don't think there's been anything conclusive on that one. We can talk more about that in the men's one next week.
We will talk more about it in the men's for sure.
Definitely. Fenugreek.
Yeah, fenugreek traditionally has use for a lactagogue for women, helping in promoting milk production, but it has some research behind it on improving sexual arousal, stamina, and it has some compounds in it that seem to have a positive effect on hormonal metabolism, decreasing sex hormone binding globulin, the significance of which is it frees up some of the hormones to do their job. So even if you had them there and they weren't doing everything they could, it could be because they were bound to this. And so it helps in that regard, helps both men and women. But yeah, so it has a beneficial effect on sexual health for women. And I think I'm going to let you tackle the last one here on this category.
Yes, and that is what here? Pycnogenol?
Pycnogenol.
Yeah, or as its common name is French maritime pine bark. It comes from pine bark. There's a lot of benefits here for that, but this is in the area of sexual health, so it improves blood flow. Could have some benefits there, but again, I don't think there's any particular studies for pycnogenol in that area. Mainly for cardiovascular health.
A ton of studies on it for all kinds of things, but I often haven't used it a lot in formulation, not because it didn't have a full body of research. It has a lot of research, but
it does.
Dang, it is expensive as a raw material. To use clinically relevant doses, it was often difficult. But to its credit, they did the research, and they've got a lot of studies on different areas. I'm not sure about female sexual health. I do know they have some data on that for men.
I think that's just trying to make a correlation there with increased blood flow, and maybe that benefits that.
Yeah, sure. And it helps with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's jump into some other ingredients, non-botanical, and we'll whoosh right into that one there. And I think the first one I'm going to talk about, Gene, is huge, and this is a huge area where research is going in our industry, and that's in the microbiome space. So biotics, whether it's a probiotic, a prebiotic, postbiotic, symbiotics, you've seen it. There's way more research coming out almost daily in this field,
all the time,
in this area. So I'm if you're a product brand and you're not in this space, you're missing the wave here. So yeah, for sure, microbiome research is going to get very complex. I know a little bit more detail about this one because in my previous role, I was the lead on our biotics program with the company, and so we were mapping out all the different strains around the world that were available that had clinical research for various conditions. It's quite extensive, and it's growing quite a bit as well. There's I'd say mental wellness area is huge in terms of that. So you can see a correlation here. So if you're looking at reducing stress, mood, and all these sort of things, these are probably going to have benefits for women's health as well.
And I would just add that there's research on some probiotics specifically for vaginal health. And I'm not talking about, I'm talking about an oral application where you take it and it spreads throughout the body for improving vaginal health, vaginal bacteriosis, some other areas, and shown to actually improve in those situations. Yeast infections, where you have irritation and odor due to those infections. This has been shown to be able to help. So it has some really excellent applications.
Yeah, I could spend a show or two going through the different strains and the science.
We should do a biotics show.
Well, we did start a microbiome series. Remember in one of our previous episodes, we did. So yeah, maybe we can pick out a certain area, expand that out, and go into do a deeper dive on some of these functional areas. Like mental wellness. So we'll do that in a future episode. And then you want to talk about arginine and
arginine and citrulline. So basically, this is pretty simple. There's a couple of different nitric oxide pathways in the body. There's the nitrate pathway, and then there's the arginine pathway. In the arginine pathway, essentially, arginine gets converted to nitric oxide. The nitric oxide is a vasodilator, and you have an increase in circulation. This increase in circulation and blood flow helps enhance sexual arousal and response in both men and women. And so thereby taking arginine and citrulline, which your body can turn into arginine, the idea is this is going to help in that situation. I would just add this. My personal preference is to formulate with and to use citrulline, and I'll tell you why. Because when you use arginine as a dietary supplement with an ongoing use, not just occasionally, your body will start making less arginine. It literally goes, I'm getting plenty of arginine. I don't need to make as much. So where it might start out and you're here on your arginine levels because you're taking it, it eventually will go down back to baseline levels because you're taking it. So it doesn't need to make it. However, there's actual research showing that if you take citrulline, which converts to arginine, you'll actually get higher arginine levels than you will by taking arginine. And it also has that effect on nitric oxide. So that is my preference. Also, most of the studies done on arginine tend to be at higher doses, 3 grams and up, unless you're combining it with pycnogenol. Whereas you can use, 2 grams or as little as 1.5 grams and get some benefit with citrulline. So I kind of like it for that particular situation if you're going to do it.
Yeah, cool. And just to wrap it up here on just one other ingredient, which is kind of an obscure one, maybe a lot of people haven't heard, is bee pollen. And there's been some recent research on this. So I do want to make a call out though, that if you have allergies and specific sensitivities like that, that you just need to be aware that, this can cause problems, because if you look at, and this is a previous company, Gene, that I worked with, and we were looking at bees actually, and in terms, depending on where the bee population is, and where they're, what plants or flowers they're pollinating or whatever, the chemistry of the bee pollen or the royal jelly or any of these components from the bees and production there is going to be different. So the chemical makeup is going to be different, but there can be allergens there. So it's important to call that out if you have any kind of allergies related to, severe allergies. You might want to stay away from bee type products, whatever. But let me call out some recent studies. So there's one in 2022 with relieving menopausal symptoms. Okay, and this was a study that showed the effects of honey enriched with bee pollen, royal jelly, and bee gum on menopausal symptoms. So women that were taking the enriched honey had significant improvements in somatic, sleep, psychological, and urogenital symptoms, as well as reduced anxiety and depression. So there are a couple branded ingredients out there that have some clinical research on this areas here. So you can check those out.
And it's been, and by the way, it's just been around for our audience for a long time. It's one of the early supplements that have been in our industry. I remember it from
traditional use. Yeah, I mean, it's been going back to traditional use, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
for sure. And then so biochemical markers like estradiol, free testosterone. We'll talk more about that next week with the men's health. Antioxidant markers and anti-inflammatory markers like IL-6. Were also improved in that study.
Nice.
That's kind of interesting. Then there was the study done with a bee pollen health drink, and it was showing potential for, this is like 2014. There's not a lot of research here, but there is some, at least in the last 10 years. There's a few studies there. But enhanced immunity and physical fitness. And then the last thing I want to call on this is anaphylaxis from bee pollen supplements. So while it does have health benefits, there are some potential risks. So it's important to understand that. So there was a case study done, a report on a severe allergic reaction, which is anaphylaxis, in a woman that was taking bee pollen supplements. And so it emphasizes the need for caution, awareness of potential allergies. And again, it's going to be different based on where the source of that particular ingredient is coming from as well.
If you have an allergy to bee stings, definitely don't use it.
Well, or any of those allergens that are present they're going into flowers and pollination. So I mean, it's going to the chemistry is going to end up in there as well in a concentrated way. So probably best to stay away from it there. Anyway, so I think, Gene, I think that about wraps up our show today for women's health. And there's more we could go into detail about this. Again, if you guys
much more, but yeah.
If you got questions, you want some references, we've got some current references in this area, a lot of different ingredients, or if we missed one here, we didn't cover it, let us know. Like I said, it's not comprehensive here. We just pulled out the ones that are of interest or ones that we work with in terms of formulation stuff. And then I guess, again, closing, I don't have any closing comments or announcements. I think we're good. Gene, you got anything? You got anything you want to add?
Nothing to add at the moment.
Okay.
Just join us for the next one, because I think it'll be interesting too, because we're going to give equal time to men's health issues.
Yeah.
And so something that both you and I personally, we have, personal investment in being men, but have also dealt with professionally in formulations and other issues out there. So.
Yeah, and I think that's important to call out. I see a deficit of talking about specific things for men's health, but there's a lot of discussion about things for women's health. So we want to give it equal time here, because there's important things specific to men, obviously related to prostate health, BPH, these other, the sexual health, this sort of thing. So again, some things we'll get into a lot of detail next week on that one. All right, without further ado, we'll take us out, and thanks for joining us. Again, this podcast will be post production will be out there and all the places, the usual places, sometime later today or tomorrow. But anyway, thank you for joining us, and I'm Dr. Bill.
Professor Gene.
Professor Gene, we'll see you guys when we see you. All right, take care.